Welcome to this webinar, the last of a series of webinars that are the product of a very exciting project, the Standards Alignment to Industry Clusters project that Literacy Texas has had the pleasure of working on for the last year, funded through a grant from the Texas Workforce Commission. If you have been, and some of you, I recognize you have been in the previous webinars, you know what the project was about. If today is your first webinar, you're going to see and hear the perspective of employers who helped us during this process, during the last year, develop this alignment of the standards that we use in adult education to the minimums needed by industry for entry-level and intermediate-level jobs. Today's presenters will be Carl Hagler and Ray Nelson. Carl and Ray work with Carl Hagler Enterprises, and we have had the pleasure of working with the two of them at Literacy Texas. Carl is a former National Director of Adult Education for the U.S. Department of Education, and he was a special advisor to the governor of Mississippi for literacy and workforce development. Ray worked in the White House as associate director for education policy back in the days of President Bush. And she's a former executive director of the National Chamber of Commerce. You're also going to hear from an employer panel. These four people represent the four industries that we worked with. We worked with four clusters of industries: healthcare, sciences, transportation, distribution, and logistics, advanced manufacturing, and construction and extraction. These four people, Jackie Brandt, Diana Contreras, J.R. Gamble, and Dave Lindsay, representing their industries, have been really fundamental, critical in our being able to develop this project. And I think you will find it very, very informative to see their perspective. Their contributions have been absolutely outstanding. And we at Literacy Texas are very, very happy that they are here today to talk to all of you. Anne-Marie, why don't you take it back again? Thank you, everybody, for being with us.
Thank you so much, Federico. So at this time, I would like to remind everyone that we are going to start recording the webinar now. And again, I'd like to welcome everybody to Standards Alignment into Industry Clusters, webinar number 3, Texas Employers Perspective. Carl is ready to go. Carl, you have the presenter rights.
All right. Thank you very much. And good afternoon to everyone. Thank you for joining us. I know some of you have been with us previously, so thank you for coming back. We believe this is going to be a very informative and exciting webinar closing out our series that we worked on with TCAL and Literacy Texas. Summing up our project is going to be my role this afternoon, and then I'll turn it over to my partner, Ray Nelson, and she will handle the panel of the employers. So just to have the background so everyone is on the same page, you'll know this is the final in a series of seminars, webinars, as Anne-Marie and Federico said. And today we're focusing on the Texas employer's perspective. And we have the four industry sectors represented today, as you see here on the screen. And we think you're going to hear some of the same kind of things we heard in our meetings over the past year, but always original and fresh in their perspectives. So we're looking forward to hearing from our industry representatives today. So our objectives for today: to learn more about what it means to be prepared for the real-world demands of basic skills at work. And in our project, we got very specific about what those basic skills are, what those requirements are, and our long-term goal is always as I was taught by Mrs. Bush when I worked with her in Washington when she was the Vice President's wife. Our focus is always on the adult learner, and as we think about those real-world demands, we want to be working with adult educators and career navigators, literacy providers, and helping them understand, helping you understand how those real-world demands can be translated into what you're doing in the classroom and also in counseling with your adult learner clients. All of this was, of course, supported by the Texas Workforce Commission and consistent with that mission that you see here. And we had a number of opportunities to have representatives from TWC with us and to reinforce this mission and how important it was the work the employers particularly did in helping us bring their valuable perspective to this mission. Also, just wanted to reinforce the fact that TWC is very much involved in carrying out this strategic plan for adult education literacy. If you look at these three tactics here, I think you'll see tactic number 3 is bolded, and we think that as we look at our project from a 40,000-foot view, this is what we saw as being our particular charge, to align the AEL levels found in the AEL content standards, to align those to occupationally specific skills and work readiness requirements, including work recognized certifications. So here's the basic mission that we carried out, and that is working with the content standards that most of you have been working with over the past year, and seeing how they aligned with the in-demand entry-level and intermediate-level jobs across 4 industry sectors. And we looked at, in terms of these 4 industry sectors, we came up with about 200 jobs in a process I'll explain here shortly. We came up with about 200 jobs that met this particular criterion and in terms of entry-level and intermediate-level jobs. So we had a really good sample to work with in identifying those critical skills required for success. Here were the project objectives, just to take a look at these and give you a sense of what we were up to throughout the year. Always keeping in mind that the end use of what our work output was going to be critical for you in the classroom and as you work with adult learners in career counseling. So you'll see guiding the development of skills, defining skills not easily identified in the academic standards, focusing instruction and career guidance, promoting the adult education literacy provider network and adult learners as an employer resource, engaging employers and workforce professionals with adult education literacy providers. And this last one is very important for us as we kept this in mind. We wanted to develop a methodology to review the skills in other sectors, specifically using ONET, the Occupational Information Network from the U.S. Department of Labor. We had a webinar. Some of you may have joined us on Tuesday or heard about this earlier, but ONET was a tremendous resource for us in helping us look at individual jobs and also look across those 200 jobs that were identified as critical entry-level and intermediate-level jobs. Here were the partners in the project. Literacy Texas, you've heard from Federico. The Educational Testing Service played a critical role in terms of the research that they did with ONET and helping us identify those critical skills and abilities across the 200 jobs. The National Center for Construction Education Research, represented in this case by Dave Lindsay on the call today. Very critical for us to have their perspective, and Dave had done a lot of work with another group in 2016 that helped us get our feet on the ground and moving quickly to help us come up with a methodology we thought would be helpful across not just construction but also the other 3 industry sectors. And then Ray and I acted as the project managers over the last year and have had a lot of interesting experiences in our times in Texas and building on work we'd done previously in the state. Just to give you some sense of the face-to-face meetings, we had a total of about 10 meetings and some multiple meetings in Austin, for instance, but met around the state. So we tried to make it easy for our, particularly our industry sector folks, to get to these meetings and face-to-face, small group, focus groups, and very powerful to hear what they had to say, not only to us but to each other. A lot of interesting dialogue. And here's sort of an overview that we think is helpful in understanding the difference between the standards that we've been developing over the past year and the content standards. And the focus in our case was the employers talking more about learning to do as opposed to learning to learn. And we'll talk a little bit more depth about that when we get to a particular sample we've brought along to show you the results of our work. But the whole notion was we need to really focus on those things that are key for successful work and entry-level and intermediate-level jobs. And that includes critical thinking, teamwork, those kinds of things, employability skills, being drug-free, being focused on productivity and safety, and understanding what it means to progress in careers. Because we were very conscious, and the employers really helped us focus on this, that it's not just getting that entry-level job, it's also being able to progress in a career. And sometimes that requires more credentials and certificates. So learning is not necessarily something that was we overlooked, but we just wanted to put more of an emphasis on what it means to apply basic skills in the context of work. So here's a specific example. We wanted just to illustrate the work that we did, both with the employers as well as with the adult education literacy providers, subject matter experts. In this particular case, we just chose mathematics, which we had identified in ONET as one of the critical areas that was true important across all four industry sectors. And here we've given you the content standards language on the left and the industry examples on the right. In this case, we chose healthcare sciences as well as transportation, distribution, and logistics. And we wanted you to see how we then used ONET in terms of looking at ONET detailed work activities in order to align the industry examples we got from our representatives to the content standards. So that just gives you a snapshot of the kind of work we did over the year. I wanted to now turn it over to my partner, Ray Nelson, who is going to be taking us through the employer panel. And here's Ray.
Very much, Carl, and it is a real pleasure to be here this afternoon. So let's get straight to the questions. So we'll ask each one of our panelists to introduce themselves and tell us a little bit more about their background, and then start with these two questions. Is there actually demand for entry-level and intermediate-level employees in your industry, and what are the critical knowledge, skills, and abilities that you look for these jobs? So Jackie, may we start with you?
Yes, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here today. This is sort of closing a loop for me. Adult education has always been my first love. I was a volunteer at Becker Community School in Austin, and then I got a job working at Austin Community College at the old Ridgeview campus doing ESL, GED, and ABE back in the day. Then when I got my master's degree and went into corporate life, I've spent 32 years before retiring in healthcare at University Health System, and now that I have my own company, I continue to work with a lot of healthcare organizations. So I'm very excited to sort of apply my past and then my present and hope that this can have a big impact on the future, because I do know, having been an instructor myself, what kinds of needs they have to reach the students. So I'm here with really good news to question number one. Is there demand? Boy, is there. Healthcare is growing amazingly across the country, and certainly in Texas. A lot of that has to do with demographics. So many people are, of course, moving to our fabulous state. And then, of course, we baby boomers are aging, darn it, and we're going to need a lot of care. So there is a huge growth in healthcare, and what we would call front-line jobs are the entry-level and intermediate-level employees in the healthcare industry. So front-line makes up about half of all the jobs in healthcare. So there is a huge demand, and I just went out there and looked at the website for jobs for University Health System here in San Antonio where I work, and there are many, many, many jobs that require a high school diploma. So what are these jobs? They could be in patient registration, it could be in direct patient care as an attendant or a medical assistant, environmental services, technical, nutrition, safety services. There's quite a diversity of jobs, and there's also amazing potential to, as Carl talked about, progress with career paths, career plans, career ladders, and even a career lattice in which they don't necessarily go up, but to the side to get a different kind of job. And so what are the critical knowledge, skills, and abilities that healthcare is looking for? First of all, they clearly have to know their job, so they would have to be able to perform the technical aspect of the job. But then the overriding skill that we are desperately in need of now in this age of reimbursement and transparency for pay is we need people who have amazing empathy and customer service skills or patient relation skills, people who can tune into healthcare is a interesting dichotomy of high tech these days and high touch. We're really looking for people who have those great people skills. Then we're looking for teamwork. As you know, healthcare is a collegial profession, and so you have to be able to work with people all the way up to physicians and everyone else. So that's very important. But then on the flip side, very important to be able to use critical thinking for those times and those jobs that are independent. So great future, lots of opportunity, lots of ability to progress, and I would love for you to steer people into the healthcare field.
Jackie, thank you so much. Diana Contreras, please introduce yourself and how would you answer these questions?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is, of course, Diana Contreras, and I've been in the industry for about 25 years, working for some supply chain giants such as Dollar General, Walmart, Hewlett-Packard, and Grocer Supply, and a couple investment firms. And there is a huge demand in supply chain, transportation, logistics, and distribution for entry-level and intermediate jobs. Now, ours is a little bit different than healthcare. We need about 80% of our workforce to be entry-level or intermediate level, and it's all functions, from material handler, production, general warehouse, even drivers. If you look now, I don't know if any of you have noticed, but as you're driving around, you see signs everywhere that say drivers, CDL, need people who can make deliveries. And that is a big concern for the industry as a whole for the next 5 years. Right now, just in the 2 warehouses that we have in Texas, we're looking to employ 500 people at entry level and intermediate. So if you multiply that across other companies such as a Walmart or an H-E-B, that is a huge impact on what we can do for our Texans and getting them into the workforce. And for us, we're looking for basic skills. We want them to be able to communicate well. We need basic reading and writing. But as they turn into intermediate jobs, we want the problem solving and the critical thinking and the ability to negotiate. So we are looking for people, and with the partnership of our educators, we know that we can put those people to work, and we can put them to work very quickly.
Diana, thank you so very much. J.R. Gamble, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is J.R. Gamble. My background is I'm 20 years retired Navy with a background in machining, nuclear maintenance, and fighter jet maintenance. 2006, I was picked up at Steel Power Tools as a technical trainer to develop all their robotic programs and things like that. And then I also was an adjunct professor and went full-time for several years teaching business courses, and now I'm the National Training Manager for Klein Tools. To answer the question about entry level and intermediate level, for us in the manufacturing world, we definitely are looking for machine operators, assembly workers, and forklift drivers. That's our basic package coming in the door. But problem solving is a very tough skill to find. So we're looking at that. As far as critical knowledge and skills, we need the person to come in to be able to understand work instructions, not only written but verbally, being able to communicate clearly that they understand the process to their supervisor, and then definitely critical thinking. And I think critical thinking across the board, it really doesn't matter what industry you're in, that is a major factor.
Great. Thank you so much, JR. And Dave Lindsay.
Hello, good afternoon. This is Dave Lindsay. I am retired from a company called LyondellBasell, headquartered in the U.S. in Houston. I've also previously worked for Exxon and Arco Corp. My background is kind of different from education. Was a chemical engineer and got an MBA, and then ran different technical jobs in the chemical and refining side, and then moved to finance, and then to management jobs. The jobs that made me most engaged or involved in adult ed and literacy, and really jobs in general, was running corporate purchasing and corporate quality for the corporation. That was where we really started to have to learn what people needed to do, and I got, in terms of actual skills, got involved with adult education and literacy through Literacy Advance of Houston, and from the advisory board for the Workforce Commission, and the predecessor to that, TEA, ran School to Work in Houston. So I've been kind of dabbling at this for quite a while. The question that we're talking about in the construction side for demand for entry level, I'd say exclamation points, tremendous demand for entry and intermediate in construction. There's over 50 craft areas that the construction industry needs, and there are entry-level jobs, and then a fabulous career progression with very good pay in those industries. The kind of skills that are looked for are the foundational skills are just key, and they've been mentioned several times, but worth always mentioning again: the problem-solving, critical thinking, ability to work on a team, ability to communicate well with your team members, specifically ability to listen to understand, and have a good work ethic. And then your basics after that: reading, writing, and arithmetic, and I'll throw in ability to measure. So those are kind of core requirements. And then in our industry, English is very important for both ability to do the job and also to work safely and in an environmentally sound manner with yourself and your team. And lastly, there's a strong drug-free requirement in the industry, again, for safety and environmental performance. So that's kind of a quick thumbnail on the construction. I'm coming from the industrial and the commercial area. Many of these things apply also in residential.
Wonderful. Dave, thank you so much. And we'll go to our next question. And just to let participants know, after our panelists answer these questions, we're going to be opening up to the floor and welcoming your questions. So our next question: what did you learn from participating in the Standards Alignment Industry Cluster process? And this time, let's start with Diana.
Well, everyone, what I learned is there is a true and genuine desire between both factions to produce easily accessible skills and tools and resources for educators and employers. I mean, we know that there's evidence that suggests that there are employment gains when they have good and strong education or career-based knowledge skills. And what we see here working with this project is those tools are feasible. When you come together, it's possible, and we can move employment forward in all industries. It's not just one particular industry, but across all four, and all four have all basic functional and fundamental things that they need, like communication or problem solving. So that's what we've learned. That's what I've learned from this program.
Great. Diana, thank you so much. JR, how about you?
Sure. What I learned was math and English is definitely the foundation of any workforce as you're building it up. And actually here at Klein, we have not only English as a second language, but we also have the high school equivalency program on site for our employees. So that's how important it is. So they feel that they can grow. So that's what I've kind of taken away from this.
Okay, great. Dave Lindsay, how about you?
I would say just reinforcing what everybody else said, but throwing in the point about being aware of what the student, what our adult learner is looking for, what their skill sets are aligned for, those basic foundational skills of the problem solving, the critical thinking, teamwork. They're kind of cross-cutting across, but then your individuals are going to be better in some areas than others. The technical side is an area, if they really enjoy math and things like that, that's in science, that would help maybe to a craft and have more involvement there. So the career pathway counseling, I think, is a critical point as we help people learn what's a great opportunity for them and kind of get them in a pathway that they can be successful.
Great. And for our last answer for this particular question, Jackie.
Well, the first thing I learned was about ONET, because I didn't know that ONET even existed. So that was quite an eye-opener for me. And also, of course, the standards. It's been a long time since I taught. And so I wasn't even aware that there were standards that we were going to try to update. So that was good for me. And just seeing both the similarities among the industries and the diversity was very interesting. Some things are more important in healthcare and less so in other fields. But as we've said, the main thing that I saw coming all the way through was communication, whether it's written, spoken, but communication is very, very important to success in a job and to progression.
Thank you so much. We're going to be hearing a lot more from our employers coming up, but for right now, we'd like to turn it over and hear from the participants. So I'm going to ask Dr. Deb Hargrove to moderate any participant questions that we hope are coming in.
Hi, Ray. Thank you very much. We haven't had any come in just yet. Folks, please feel free to type those into the chat pod, and if you have a particular question for a particular panelist, we can have them answer directly as well.
Great. Thank you, Deb. Okay, well, let's go back to our questions for the employers. So our next question is, do you think that this initiative, the work we've been doing over the last year with employers and adult educators, do you think has the potential to make a difference for adult learners? And how about in your particular organization and industry? And this time, Dave Lindsay, may we start with you?
Okay. I think I've got my, there we go. I think this has a potential opportunity for a difference. And the reason in the construction industry, and you saw the NCCER reference there, I'm the ambassador for Texas for NCCER, and I've been working with it for about 20 years. Our program, what NCCER does is the accrediting institution for learning, and in particular certificates. And there tends to be 3 to 4 modules involved. The entry, it starts with a core curriculum, which is a really good fit for adult learners, and then it progresses. So as the opportunity for the adult ed side to help the learners, the students, to grow and keep up with the academics as they progress through those in a chosen career pathway, I think is huge. And so it's an area that I've always thought was just waiting. This is a great resource pool for the employers, the adult ed learner community. So yes, I think the answer is a strong yes there.
Okay, great, thank you. And Jackie from Healthcare Sciences.
Well, yes. In healthcare, we have something, this may be in other industries as well, called speed to competence, which basically means how fast can we get someone up to speed to be competent in their job. And we have all sorts of agencies, including state health departments and regulatory bodies. The Joint Commission are checking on our staff competence on a regular basis. So if we can get someone who is prepared to already be in a good spot and can quickly get up to competence, so that we don't have to spend a lot of time on working with them on basic skills. That is a true plus for the healthcare industry. We need people that can come in and get going. So the better prepared they are, the better it is for us. So I think there's an enormous advantage to having an adult learner who has been through a program that has given them these real-world, real-life experiences and not focused on the hypothetical.
Great. And JR, how about you?
The difference, pretty much exactly what Jackie just said, even in the manufacturing world, to be able to create that basic skill set, so when that new employee comes in, we can set up a on-the-job training so they learn a new skill set and then develop them along the way. So they feel not only the company's investing in them, but they have self-gratification that they are growing within the company.
Okay. And then Diana, same questions.
Yes, absolutely. I have to agree with everyone else. There is so much potential in this program. After meeting with the educators, I realized that we can develop a program or tool that's very accessible, but it can be simple, and it can be broken down by function or by cluster, industry cluster, and it can meet both the goals of the educator and the employer, which is a program that we can make for real-world scenarios that can put people into a workforce very quickly if done correctly and with the participation of both partnerships between educators and the employers. And for our industry, kind of to piggyback on what JR was saying, we have programs with ESL and the GED program to get people into the industry, but this overlay that we're doing makes it so much more beneficial for what we need in the next 5 to 10 years.
And I think that's an important point, that we really did try to look towards the future as we were all working together on this. Great. Thank you very much. Just checking in once again with Deb. Do we have any questions coming in?
Yes, we do, Ray. The first question is, what are some micro-credentials that adult learners could try to achieve that would be looking for as an employer? So what are employers looking at in terms of some micro-credentialing?
Any of our employers to jump in?
I'll take that one to start with. For construction in the industrial and commercial area, we've developed a core curriculum that is available across the state in many areas, in community colleges, in the Association of Business and the ABC, Associated Business and Contractors, some centers, and basically those teach the basic skills, the foundational skills, and some from very basic skills. If you get a core credential, that allows you then to go to any one of those other 50-plus crafts. And there's some backup materials that go along with that. There's a Tools for Success book that gets into specifics about these foundational skills of problem solving, teamwork, teaching you what the industry expects. So that would be, for the construction side, sort of what you're calling a micro-credential.
Okay, thank you. Amy, were you also talking about badging by chance, those micro badges that folks have been earning for participating in little short bursts of learning? Yes, so she's looking for, I'm sure you're familiar with like the North Star project, where they've got little badges for completing a micro-credential on understanding Word in Microsoft Office, or some conflict management, or something like that. So are you all, as employers, familiar with a badging system? I think that might be what she's asking. And correct me if I'm wrong, Amy.
For construction, the closest thing I would think to a badging would be going to the safety training prerequisites.
Okay.
That might fit what you're talking about, but you have like in Houston, the Houston Safety Council. There's a number of safety type trainings. I think the trucking industry, I think, has the same thing, right?
Good. I think that's what she's looking for.
Yeah, we don't have that in manufacturing.
Okay.
That's a good idea.
This is Jackie, and to my knowledge, we don't in healthcare either. But the one thing I would suggest is if you want to be in healthcare, almost any job is you're going to be asked to have, or it's going to be preferential for you to have American Heart Association credential. So you will have to have the basic BLS or basic life support in any of the jobs on the clinical side.
One follow-up to that, this is Dave. Our industry, the NCCR curriculum, does have the opportunity to provide certificates all the way down to the module level. And what that means is the employers might be looking for people that could do specific tasks. And the system allows for training to be done at that specific modular level and gain a credential without having to get the entire craft level 1 or 2 credential. So that's a sort of a very limited training that would in fact maybe get a job opportunity.
Okay, terrific.
So
now,
in go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So in supply chain and transportation and logistics, the closest thing we have to that is there's programs out there that work with certificates, say, such as a college, that can give them ISM or APEX or, any type of little bit of logistics training to get them familiar with the background of the industry that they want to come in, or maybe even a CDL. The commercial driver's license can get them into entry-level positions as well in logistics.
Terrific. Thank you. The second question, I think, is towards Dave. What networking tips would you give students interested in entering the industrial field and construction industry? What are some networking tips?
Oh, that's interesting. Good question.
Any local
networking tips? I think conferences. I think one thing you might first do is go on the nccer.org website, and it would give you all of the opportunity areas that are available in construction across the country, and all the different crafts that, and also go beyond crafts. So you get into pipeline operations. There's a huge number of areas that NCCR supports. The industry developed this. It's sort of just you say, what the heck is this? It's a partnership between the big things that are called owner companies, that with names you would recognize: Exxon, Shell, DuPont, Dow, Lyndale, and then the construction companies that actually do the work, Kellogg, Brown and Root. Those came together, developed this curriculum, and we did it primarily to make sure that we had people that were trained in the industry to provide a safe workplace. And it's a really unusual curriculum with all of the training materials that are laid out. If you are looking for contacts, the ABC chapters, there I think are the eight across the state, Associated Builders and Contractors. You could see where chapters are and go actually talk to them in your area and see what are they looking for, what are the demand jobs that are available, and then just start to think about where your interest is. I mean, that you guys are the teachers, so you're going to be coaching the students, the learners, to help them think through choices, career choices. I hope that's sort of starting to get at answering that question.
I think it is, and that would even be a really good field trip for a class if they were interested in that field, to go to some of those chapter meetings or such. The only other thing I wanted to mention here, and then I'll let Ray pick it back up, is for those of you who might not be aware, I'm putting it in the chat pod. The Goodwill Global Foundation has some free online training with some micro credentials. I don't know that they actually give you a certificate, but I've put the link in there that you might want to get them interested in for workplace skills. It has business communication skills, job success, and some workplace basics that you might be interested in looking at. It's back to you, Ray.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Deb. Great. So our next question, and we will have opportunities for more participant questions, so keep them coming in. Great questions out there. Thank you. One of the things we heard a lot about during the year was some of the really exciting things that are going on currently between business and education partnerships, working with adult educators to set them up for success. So I wanted to ask those on our employer panels, have you had experience working in business education partnerships? And if so, what lessons learned and what opportunities do you see out there to be working with adult educators and career navigators? Dave, let's start with you.
Okay. The industry, the answer is really no. We haven't done this yet. It's been a long talking point to sort of help build the system, to get the business side willing to look at adult ed students. One thing we've really emphasized is we're not talking about taking people that without skills. That's exactly what adult ed is there, to get basic foundational skills and then help them through training. But there really hasn't been an experience factor in the construction side with taking adult ed students. What there has been over time is getting people from the industry to volunteer for adult ed programs as tutors. So you may find that's a different way of looking at this, but the businesses I think are a great place to go encourage participation maybe through the volunteer side of the house of adult education.
Terrific. JR, how about you?
Yes, I would say I work with the colleges weekly. So a year and a half ago, before I started here at Klein, we had no training. When I came on board, I connected with TCC at Tarrant County. We started looking at what we could develop. And they helped me develop different skill sets to bring in, along with allowing me to apply for a training grant from the state, which brought in at least 15 more classes from, actually I just had a blueprint reading class last week. I've had computer classes and things like that not only allows me to take our employees to where they're at and groom them in their skill set. We're now looking at, I just put a proposal in to create an apprenticeship program, which also leads to a 2-year degree in college. So we're growing there. I'm always in a meeting with a school somewhere. So it's very important to create those partnerships and to keep on track with the workforce and the educational world.
And JR, what's been the value for you of being able to launch all these programs and work with these partnerships? And what advice would you give to other employers who are interested in doing the same? Or what advice would you give to adult educators who are interested in partnering with business? Sure.
Do it. Get with your local community college and your colleges around and partner up with them, because our employees, you know, when you come to work and you work 10-hour days, 4 days a week, and they run the machine, but they want growth, just like we want growth. So to see them in a class going, wow, I learned something today, and that was really cool. What's next? That's what I get all the time. So that's what excites me.
I would imagine, and imagine that has impact for retention, for example, when people can see that a company believes in them and their growth. That's very powerful. Jackie, Jackie, during the year you've talked a lot about some great different ideas about having adult educators come into the workplace, get some firsthand experience that way. So what experience have you had working in education partnerships?
At University Health System, we were very fortunate to have established some strong partnerships in the community. Obviously, we are a community organization, partially taxpayer supported, and so we had a close bond with the Alamo colleges here, and we were able to sponsor many programs. And I think the key to what JR was talking about is the ability to have those programs on site, because when people work very hard, as they do, long shifts, have families, sometimes transportation problems, maybe a second job, whatever, is very important that you bring the learning to them. So the community colleges are great at that. You provide the room, you provide maybe the multimedia, maybe catering, some materials, and get them a good parking spot because that's always an issue. And then and provide them with the staff, because what's interesting is that they get grant funds and they need you. They need employers just as much as you need the instruction. So we have had a lot of good programs taking entry-level people and then turning them into candidates for the certified nurse assistant, passing that, also turning people into skilled interpreters, bilingual staff. We've had RNs. We also worked with Project Quest, which is a community organization that got a Kellogg Foundation grant, and Northside Independent School District as well came on site with adult education and taught English as a second language to our staff. The most important thing is to let people know that you're interested in being that partner. Establish those relationships in the community even before you want to, get something like this going, so you're seen as a good partner. And then, of course, be a good partner. Support them, whatever they need. Sometimes they'll need a letter of endorsement for the grant or, like I said, room. And then in their grants, sometimes they have gas cards and bus passes, and I know they were able to provide stethoscopes and things like that for us. So look for partnerships and then be a good partner.
Great, Jackie. Thank you so much. Diana, how about in transportation, distribution, and logistics?
So what we find out is we've worked with several partners as well. We've worked with colleges such as UT Arlington, UTSA, Palo Alto, Texas Tech, St. Mary's. And one of the opportunities that we find is that there is a huge skills gap between what is taught in school and what the employers are looking for in the workplace. And a project such as this can actually come in and mitigate the skills shortage that we have because we have good partnerships with, organizations such as Apex or ISM or the colleges. And that's what we're looking for. So as Jackie was saying, be a good partner. Have an intern program. Some advice for employers is open up an internship program, and that way they can get firsthand the skills, knowledge of what they need to come into the organization, whether that's entry-level, intermediate, or go a little higher. And as far as educators, find out the organizations that are, or the employers in your communities and in your area, and ask them, what do you need? What do you need from us, and that we can help teach to so that we can get them in and sustain the workforce.
Thank you so much. Another issue that came up a lot as we were talking together over the past year was the use of technology in the workplace. The Texas Adult Language and Literacy Standards mentions technology broadly, but I wanted to ask our employers to give the participants on the webinar a sense of, is technology important on the job in entry-level and intermediate jobs, and if so, what kind of technology is used? JR, may we start with you in manufacturing?
When it comes to technology, automation, to be competitive in the world market, you have to be highly automated. So when the employee comes in, they have to be open-minded to learn new trades, new skills. If they're coming in on the lower level, if they come in on an intermediate level, they have to be able to go into a class and learn new skill sets like mechatronics or electronics or different circuitry or robotics. So it's very important that our folks keep their minds open.
Okay. Would anybody else like to talk about technology in your industries?
Construction, this sounds terribly simple, but measurement matters. Almost all the jobs require measurement skills, and that even starts with it being able to use something as simple as a tape measure. it's rather discouraging to find that you have people come in and they don't know how. That means you have to understand fractions. There's a lot of math that goes along with that. The other thing, technology, it gets really basic. The ability to read a graph. You know, you've got a two-dimensional graph. Somebody's ability to understand what that graph is telling them. And every job has a certain amount of technical components to it. And so even down to the equipment you use and being able to understand how that equipment works at a basic level so you can use it effectively and safely.
Great. Diana, how about you?
Well, in our industry, we have a wide variety. A lot of industry wants to go to mechanization or automation or robotics, and that becomes the new forefront of education. So they have to be aware of it. Now, the particular building I am, we went in reverse. We went back to manual because of the cost of technology and the updating and the programming and finding people that can actually do that job or the techs that can handle that. They're not out there. It's very kind of far and in between, or you have to fly someone out of Australia. So if we teach technology and get some people into those programs, that's a huge forefront to employ Texans in the workforce.
That's great. Jackie, how about in healthcare?
Healthcare is united on the clinical side by the electronic medical record. So whoever touches the patient is going to be inputting very crucial information into the electronic medical record. So it's specific software applications, and we do provide that on the site, on the job training as part of their onboarding. But of course, they have to be fairly tech savvy enough to be able to get in, sign on, understand the basic functions of a computer, and to apply what they're learning. But healthcare will give them the specific training that they need on whichever particular software application they're using for the electronic medical record.
Great. Another area of the standards that we talked about a lot during the past year was financial literacy, which I believe is new to the 2000s, the standards, the Green Book as we call it, from the earlier version. And a lot of people may ask, why in the world would employers care if adult learners come to the workplace with a knowledge and skill set around financial literacy? So I was wondering if we could get our employers' view on that. And Dave, I believe that you were pretty instrumental in getting financial literacy into the standards.
I'm guilty. You can blame me for financial literacy in the standard. And you say, well, why would employers care? The reason they would care is it's all about cost. And if the employee can understand what they're doing and how that impacts either the employer's expenses or their revenues, then that makes them a better employee because they're able to then make better decisions. You want to be able to keep costs down and you want to maximize revenues. So employees have opportunities every day to see how to actually take actions that work on one of those two sides. And if they have good financial literacy, then they're far better prepared to help the employer be profitable. And then they can take those skills home to their family and better run their household. So we just thought it was an absolute in the content standard.
Great. JR, any thoughts on financial literacy?
Absolutely. You know, I'm looking down at our production floor right now, and I'm looking at a bunch of injection molding machines. And if the employee knows that if they're creating scrap, that's wasted money. If the machine is not running properly and it's going to go down, well, then I can't produce parts. That's wasted money. And just like Dave said, it's all about the bottom line. So if everything is running efficiently and everybody's watching and they understand the critical costs, then it's a win-win for both the employee and the company.
Great. So, Jackie, is there any relevance or interest in healthcare to financial literacy?
Well, we actually did a pilot with a grant from AARP that we got through Alamo colleges and inserted into our English as a Second Language class. So what we discovered is, from a slightly different perspective than Dave and JR have talked about, but this is the personal, is many of our environmental service workers are refugees. So we have about 17 different languages spoken in environmental services, and many of them have come over. University Health System is an employment placement opportunity through Catholic Charities. So we get people who are not only don't speak English, but are completely unaccustomed to our crazy financial system of credit cards and payday loans and all of those sorts of things. So we found at University Health System that by giving them financial literacy in their own personal lives, that they were much more productive at work. They didn't have to take off because they had to go visit a loan office or take out a loan or something like that. They were much more focused on their job. Again, better patient interaction because they weren't worried about their financial future.
That's right, and I've seen studies and research and had the experience where with financial literacy and maybe a little bit of support from employers, lunchtime conversations, that an employee might be more likely to, for example, buy a house in a neighborhood and invest and stay, and that has to do with retention and the community as well. So, Diana, how about you? Financial literacy.
So that's a very interesting question. So I think the old mentality was when you had money or you're talking about millions of dollars, you don't tell the employees or you don't let them know what's going on. And probably the last decade, what I've seen is that is totally reversed now. It's about getting the employees engaged with financial stability and understanding the business and the expenses so they understand how their benefits work. So we actually had a meeting today and we had brought up some financial information, whether that's damages or overtime, or as JR said, it's the bottom line, and they understand what goes back in their pocket and how that affects their benefits, such as health care or their medical, dental, eye. Or here at Dollar General, we have a lot of employee programs, and we break it down. If you spend this much money, this does not go into your employee programs that we have for you. So the industry has changed on that. I think that is very important. I'm glad it's changed because now it makes everybody aware and they can contribute to what is beneficial for the entire organization or the industry.
That's great. Great conversation. Thank you very much. So I wanted to go back to Dr. Deb Hargrove. Do we have any other questions coming in from our participants?
Hi, Ray. Yeah, we just have one from Christina Mason, and it's in regards to ONET. So her question is, on ONET, do you find that the Find Certifications button or link, per se, is close to what your organization is looking for when hiring?
So I can just provide an overview for our employer panel. As you know, when we are working with ONET, if you go into a specific job, it comes up with a list of certifications. So, for example, we were looking at construction laborer, and an NCCER certification comes up, but there's a whole list and a whole wide list of certification opportunities that's in that database. So I just wanted to provide that brief explanation for our employers before they jump in.
So I think this is addressed to anyone on the panel.
So in our particular industry, some of the things on the certificate side when you look at ONET, yes, we want those, we like those because it gives us fundamental understanding, and we know that when they have those certificates that they come in already ahead of the ball game. But it really is function specific. Some of them are not and some are, so you really have to look at the function and look at the organization and what they're looking for, because it can be very detailed according to what that organization or what that employer wants.
Anyone else on the panel want to contribute?
Just as an awareness of the certificate in the construction side, you have these NCCER certificates which are issued by the industry. You also have a parallel sort of another type of a certificate is an actual state license, and so that's if you had a license, that pretty much says you've achieved the top level certificate in the various functional or craft area, and then you've taken a test to demonstrate you have those skills. if you have that license, you're also able to start your own business. So entrepreneurship is a sort of an opportunity area that the adult ed learners could consider, in various ways. But that's a fairly high level of learning. That would be the need to emphasize kind of the lifelong. You keep getting your higher levels done to the point where either you maximize your credential, your industry credential, or you go get a state license.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
This is JR.
Hey, JR.
As far as ONET, I know that our compensation folks, along with our recruiting team, uses ONET as a source. And I understand that it's very, very useful to them.
That's terrific. Thank you. Jacqueline, did you have anything to add? Okay, well, I think that's all with the questions, Ray.
Okay, great. So one area I've been thinking about that we might want to do a deeper dive in for the people on the webinar, and when we talked about what our employers looking for, communication comes up over and over and over again. But context is really important. So I wanted to ask our employer panelists about communication, and could you get a little bit specific about how important it is to those entry and intermediate level jobs, and give maybe an example in context of what you mean by communication. Diana, how about you?
Communication is basically two types of formats that we really look for. Communication, one, we need them to be able to express themselves. So the communication and expression of, number one, do they understand? Number two, are they happy? Do they get what we're teaching? But the other side of the communication is, for us in the industry, I have, in my particular building, probably 30-40% that don't speak English. Our technology in the building, we have things that you can program in whatever language you want. So being that we're here in Texas and there is a huge Hispanic population, the key for us for communication is we have a lot of bilingual members of management. We have orientation that comes in, and if they're just able to speak, sometimes we will give them an oral test versus a written test. But they have to be able to, I guess you could say, express themselves in that form of communication so that we can make sure that they have the right training, the right tools, the learning, and they understand and comprehend what we're teaching. But so far, we haven't had a lot of problems with that, other than they may be a little shy, and we want them to communicate.
Okay, great. Jackie, how about you? You mentioned communication in your opening remarks, and certainly have talked about it all throughout our year together.
It couldn't be more important in healthcare. We need people who can communicate with the patient, verbally, non-verbally, and of course we encourage people who speak another language fluently to speak that language if they encounter a patient or visitor who speaks that same language. We also, it's very important in dealing with the patient, families, visitors, but then also among the team. Communication is crucial when you're in a surgery, you call for a timeout, you have to be sure that everyone's understanding everyone else. And so it really is just every single minute of every day. That is what healthcare is hinging on, is great communication.
Great, thank you. JR, how about you in manufacturing?
Sure. In manufacturing, communication is paramount because of safety. They have to understand written signs. They have to understand verbally on safety factors. And then looking at work instructions, if they're on a piece of equipment, they have to understand how it operates. So, and then be able to demonstrate that as a competency skill to their lead or supervisor. So communication is very important. And again, so important that we have brought in English as a second language to help folks that need that.
Great, thank you. And Dave, how about in construction and extraction?
Okay, let me start off with the English, emphasis on the English. The construction industry is so focused on safety and environmental performance that you just simply can't afford a miscommunication. So that's where the English requirement came from. Down in communication, I mean, you're really getting into teamwork, listening, and speaking skills. Things like giving and taking instructions, offering and listening to presentations. Participating effectively as a team member. As simple as talking with your coworkers and your supervisors, and potentially with clients. But then the communication extends to writing. Often you have to be able to write, fill out, complete a report for a task that you did. So that means you've got to be able to understand, read the material. So writing communication is very important to ensure that you did the job and you did it. You met all the requirements of doing that. And then you really get into listening. People tend to not listen. So that's an area that's emphasized a lot. If you don't listen, you didn't understand. If you didn't listen, you didn't get the key points that was going to meet your job that day. So just put it in all caps. Communication is key.
Great. And I would imagine, in addition to listen, it's asking questions and knowing when and how to ask questions to check for understanding. If you don't understand something, it's an aspect of communication as well. Terrific. Okay, we have another question for our panelists, and then we'll have another opportunity to see if there are any participant questions coming in. So from the beginning of this process, the employers in particular said, please don't let this be a report that sits on a shelf. So what do you all see as next steps or ideas, and what message would you have to adult educators in terms of next steps? And let's start with JR.
What I see is that if educators and the workforce can still keep maintaining this dialogue and listen to the workforce. I know sometimes, because I worked in education, sometimes it's hard when you have a program that's already set or curriculum that's already set to change that curriculum. It could take years. I've done advisory boards where the school told me, JR, that's great, we can do that. It's going to take us 2 years to make that change. So, it's a give and take. So we have to be able to keep this dialogue open, but also not just talk about it, put it to action.
Absolutely. Diana, how about your thoughts?
So I think a program like this has so much potential, and we're definitely heading in the right direction. At one of our meetings when we were in Houston, we had our educators there, and just to listen to them and what they discussed about having a program or a tool that has clear and defined, KSAs, the knowledge, skills, and ability for the industry, very specific to a function. I thought that was such an aha moment for me with parameters, and I think we can do something like that. And then having that partnership and saying, okay, we need to move the ball forward, I think it would be not only beneficial for the educators, but give them something simple to understand, but it'll turn around and benefit both parties in the end, which ultimately benefits the adult learner that we're trying to get into the workforce. But as far as the process goes, the next steps are we just need to execute.
Okay. Execute. Dave, how about you?
There we go. Okay. I think there are a couple of paths here. One, and a few of these have already been mentioned, reach out to the employers to find out what they need. In particular, beyond new employees that they're looking, a big opportunity area is with the incumbent employees that the employers find maybe have some skills they need improving. That is one area that our industry has done on the construction side. The other side is reach out to the community colleges that are delivering training now and find out, are they having problems with people keeping up in the class that you might be a great resource for. The third and last thing, it really zeroes back in on the resources that are available. I would suggest that you resources might be available. I would suggest the NCCR core curriculum The Tools for Success specifically is designed to teach these foundational skills, and they are cross-cutting across all 4 sectors. And lastly, there's a math book that we basically found out that the math in the curriculum wasn't sufficient. We needed a supplement. So there's a sort of a math that gives applied math examples that give people a lot of aha moments. They all of a sudden understand what math was all about.
Great. And Jackie?
Well, I'd like to hear back from these adult educators. I'd like to know if all of the work that we did is fruitful, if it's helpful, if it's applicable, and is there any even further than from the adult educators, our main focus is on the adult learner. I would really love to know from them, did it help them get a job? Do we have any metrics on how they were able to succeed based on this? So I would just hope that there is feedback from the adult education side as to how well this really is going to work.
That's great. Those are all great recommendations. And by the way, for those on the webinar, at the annual Literacy Texas Conference at the beginning of August, 3 of the employers here on the panel are going to be there. Dave Lindsay has another commitment, but we'll have somebody else, very esteemed colleague from Construction and Extraction. So that in early August is another opportunity to continue the conversation. But in the meantime, Deb, do we have any questions coming in?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Well, I know that Anne-Marie will have a few closing comments, and we have a few minutes left. So I'd like to invite our employers to offer any closing thoughts they have, not last thoughts, but just closing thoughts for this session, because I know the conversation will continue. And Jackie, let's start with you.
I'm just honored to have been given the opportunity to work with everyone on this project. It was a tremendous networking opportunity, and I feel good about the state of Texas investing in adult learners. Like I said, it's always been my first love, and so I'm very excited about this project, and I'm grateful to have been involved, and I'm just so hoping that we get to see some demonstrable evidence of its value.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Diana?
Well, I think from this learning experience and even what we're having today, what I received from the educators was something that I can take back to the employer. But I think the learning experience, the collaboration, the partnership between the educators and the employers is key to creating something that's that we can execute and it's viable, a program that brings benefits to the community and to the people and to the job force. But it was such a privilege just to be able to sit in a room with the educators and listen to them and figure out what they need from us, and then figure out, like, how do I help them? And because if I help them, they're automatically going to help the industry. So really eye-opening for me, and very appreciative of their time and everything they did for us.
Great. Thank you so much, Diana. JR?
I just want to thank all the educators, because as a past educator, I understand that a classroom comes in, you teach them, a classroom leaves, and it's next. The next class comes in. And sometimes you don't see the fruits of your labor. But they normally come to me as a corporate trainer, and I get them, and I take them to the next level. And I just want to say thank you for what you're doing and the hard work that you put in.
Thank you so much, JR. And Dave Lindsay.
Okay. Well, after working with the advisory board as the business representative for many years, and seeing the opportunities that we could have to help people, I can't sort of express how happy and excited I am that we've gotten to this step. I mean, we wrote it out working with Anson Green. We've written it into the strategic plan, and basically this is really a big step in making this thing happen. So I really would encourage everybody. This is a great opportunity for the students, for the state, for business. So really looking forward to watching how we can implement the process.
And I can't thank the employer panel enough. For those of you listening on the webinar, I hope you get a sense of not only the passion and commitment, but the sense of urgency from Jackie and Diana and JR and Dave representing their industry sectors. It is something from the very beginning of this project that came through loud and clear. And when they said, please don't let this sit on a shelf, I think we, working on the project, heard this is something that needs to be done and acted on, and there's urgency, and it's about the adult learners and getting jobs and careers and being able to support their families, and it's very exciting. So I cannot thank the employers enough, and I think we have a few minutes left, but I'll turn it back over to Anne-Marie or Deb if we have any questions.
Thank you so much, Ray, and I want to, on behalf of Train PD at TCAL, to also thank the 4 presenters that were on today. Beth Ponder and myself were able to participate in the Standards Alignment to Industry Cluster meetings over the course of the year, and what struck me as the most powerful was the participation and feedback and knowledge that the employee partners have given. And so I want to say thank you. I mean, the energy and the enthusiasm is unbelievable. So I appreciate them very much, and I also appreciate the hard work preparing for this webinar today. So I humbly thank all 4 of you. And just a couple quick reminders before we forget. And I do want to share this comment before we forget. Thank you, Deb, for letting me do this. This is from African Standing Bear, and there was a comment in the chat pod to the employers. While listening to the information provided, I have been taking note of how to adjust individual lessons and incorporate some specific skills mentioned. Thank you. So I think that was a very valuable comment to share. Also, I also want to remind everyone that you will be able to print your certificate of completion for this webinar from the PD portal. From your transcript, please wait until tomorrow to do so. I'll do my best to get it done today, but by tomorrow. And also, there's a reminder, a couple things. Kelly Meeks, who's joining us as a participant today, Workforce Wednesdays is a webinar series that we do once a month. It's a phenomenal webinar series bringing practitioners from the field to talk about best practices, and they're going to be talking about verbal and nonverbal communication on July 25th, and you can register for that in the PD portal. So I wanted to remind everyone of that. And also, on the topic of ONET, we have an adult education practitioner, Christina Mason, and she did a Tech and Tell webinar on ONET, and it's available in the PD portal. So if you want a further review of ONET, it's a great review that really goes well with the webinar that we had this week on ONET in action. So I think that is also, oh yes, one more reminder, and that is, if you had colleagues sitting with you today but did not register or log into the portal, please go ahead and email me, and I'm going to put my email in the chat pod so that you can have it and let me know. And that is all of the closing remarks. And I also do want to take this time to also thank Carl and Ray for their leadership through these webinars. We appreciate you both so very much. And at this time, I am going to let Carl and Ray give the final closeout, and thank you.
Before Carl and Ray, this is Federico, if you will, I just wanted to, on behalf of Literacy Texas, thank very, very, very profoundly thank the 4 presenters from the industries. It was a pleasure working with you, and your contributions are really fantastic. The comments that I have heard today indicate that your contribution has been really welcome, and it will make a difference. So again, thank you very much. Thank you to those of you from the Texas Workforce Commission who are listening, because this project has been a real pleasure to work with. And last thing that I wanted to remind everybody is that we have the Literacy Texas Conference in just 2 weeks. We do have a number of available scholarships for those people who need a scholarship. And definitely we're taking registrations for those programs who can pay for registrations. So please go to the website. I just shared it in the chat. And I hope to see many of you register for the conference. Thank you very much. Carl, it's all yours. Carl and Ray.
So this is Ray, and on behalf of Carl and myself, I do want to say thank you so much to TCAL, Literacy Texas, the employer partners, Texas Workforce Commission, and I want to pick up on what Jackie said at the end, that please don't let this sit on a shelf. We really want to hear from you. We want to partner with you, all the adult educators, career navigators, program directors out there, and so I hope this is just the beginning of a conversation that will continue and partnerships that will develop and endure. So thank you very, very much, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you so much, Carl and Ray. And as I like to say, we will go ahead and we will leave the room open for a few minutes to see if there are final questions, and then I will officially close the webinar door, as I like to say, and wish everybody a wonderful Thursday afternoon. Thank you, everybody, and take care. And thank you, Jackie, Diana, JR, and Dave. Best, everyone. Bye-bye.